Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's go. So right away we're gonna start to review the military map because what is happening near Sudzha is absolutely crazy. Well, you might already know this information that there is a huge gas supply hub in Sudzha. Sudzha is one of those crucial nodes of the Russian gas pipeline infrastructure. So pipeline goes here and later on to Ukraine and later on to European consumers. But as you know, Ukraine stopped pumping Russian gas to Europe. But the gas pipeline is still there. So what Russian army did, they sent their soldiers inside that pipeline to reach Ukrainian positions somewhere behind the front lines, to not be attacked by FPV drones, to avoid the minefields. Well, it's kind of the interesting tactics for the Russian army command, which they do not use for the first time. Before, like 2 years ago, they've used the same principle in Avdiivka. There they were partially successful, but it was a complete failure for the Russian operation this time. Why? Well, according to the latest information published by this analytic source, and the Russians, by the way, also confirmed that between 80 up to 100 Russian special forces operators were eliminated earlier today in Kursk Oblast, attempting to infiltrate Ukrainian frontline positions near town of Sudzha using tunnels linked to nearby underground gas pipeline. And they also confirmed that in Avdiivka it was done the same way, but there it was more or less successful, but this time it was a total failure for Russians. And here we have some of the photos of them, how they went to the tunnels.
Труба куда ведет? На Суджу нахуй, это же ёбнуться. Никогда бы не подумал, 12 километров по трубе, сука, воду несу, ебать. Чё там, пробка не пропускает или что случилось?
Ну чё, пацаны, как дела? На, как дела, брат?
Scrolling 13 kilometers in this kind of the environment is absolutely crazy. Moreover, after it, Russian command expect them to fight successfully against Ukrainian forces. But nevertheless, as you can see, they smoke, and luckily for them, there is no gas in this pipeline. Well, the Russians and military bloggers reported that their soldiers were not attacked by Ukrainian army, but they suffocated there. At the same time, Ukraine took more precautions to control this pipeline, because as you can see on the screenshot also shared by the Russian military media, they started to use oxygen equipment. So really, I do not exclude further attempts of Russia to move in the same pipeline, so Ukraine maybe should mine it from inside. And this is the latest information coming from the Russian military bloggers channel. They shared the video filmed by Ukrainian drones showing how Ukraine zeroed some of the Russian soldiers who managed to get into Ukrainian positions using the pipeline. So probably the information that they suffocated or something was wrong. The mil blogger 13 says that the situation using these tactics is very bad. Because yes, you may send some of the groups, but they have just the light equipment plus limited amount of food and water. And delivering all of that using the same pipeline, well, it's almost impossible. Also, evacuation of the wounded personnel, he says, and so on. So it is one-way ticket for Russian soldiers. And he complains about it, that the Russian military command does a terrible thing. And Deep State also confirms that Russians definitely managed to get to Ukrainian positions behind the front lines using the tube. But unfortunately for Russians, they didn't know where to go. They lost their position. They started to circle around the area and went under Ukrainian artillery fire. So it seems like after all they were not kaputted in tube itself, but outside the tube. So the operation, I would say, is partially successful for Russia. Because definitely they went behind the front lines, not for a long time, however, but they might try this stuff once again. And here's the railroad where some of the Russians were spotted indeed, and later on they were kaboomed or kaputted, how it's better to say. My friends, if you like the job that I do here on YouTube, you may also follow me on Patreon. I'm gonna put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for your kind support. What's about the general changes in the Kursk region? Well, there is the Russian attack towards northern part, and also over here. Here Russians haven't crossed the border with Ukraine yet, but they continue to expand their bridgehead sideways. Today they were successful in this direction, and also they took more territories in the northern part. Let's quickly zoom here. So it was yesterday and it is today. As you can see, they've took this village under control, and Mykolaiivka village went into the gray zone, so they took quite a lot of ground. In the southern area you can see they've took this part of the ground, and they continue to use North Koreans. So before they used them in the northern part, and now they use them in the south. miles. So the situation for Ukraine continued to be difficult in the Kursk region, and Russia took initiative, I would say, fully. Before, Ukraine tried to expand this area and also here somewhere, but the Russians with their attack, well, they've took the visible advantage. Those are the signs that the Kursk operation may come to its end, but really it depends on the Ukrainian military command. Maybe they would think that defending those villages is more profitable than to defend Ukrainian territory and lose Ukrainian villages. So yeah, for the last 24 hours, Russia advanced mostly in the Kursk region. On Ukrainian front lines, they were advancing the day before. But still we have, you see, the good news from Pokrovsk that Ukraine started their counterattacks. I explained about this stuff lots of the times in many of my videos, but for the last 2 days there were no movement from either of the sides. However, attacks continues. The battle is very heavy near Pokrovsk. In Toretsk, well, everything is standstill also for the second day consecutive. Ukrainian army tried to reach central part of the city, partially successful. So it was early for Russians to claim the control over Toretsk before. So except of Kursk region, I would say that front lines are more or less stable. And you know, guys, I see kind of the strange coordination between canceling the military and intelligence support of Ukraine by Trump's administration and simultaneous advancement of the Russian army in Kursk direction. And at the same time, Ukraine goes on its counterattack in Pokrovsk. After it, Russia started to launch more of the aerial attacks on Ukraine using more drones, more cruise missiles, more ballistic missiles. So yeah, I see the coordination between what Donald Trump does and what Russians do. Well, maybe they just used this vulnerable moment for Ukraine, or it was coordinated before between those sides. USA and Russia. I cannot prove it, so we may call it a conspiracy theory, but who knows? With Donald Trump in charge, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And we have just received a new military map update from the Kursk region, so Russia attacks from two of the sides more. So Lebedivka, it is now fully under Russian control, and they assault also towards Pravda small village. So Russia is definitely on full-scale attack, moving from all of the sides here, here, and even over here towards Sumy region. And also they have their failed tube attack towards Sudzha, so you see how Russia takes initiative. It shows that they were preparing this operation for a very long time. So my personal prediction that Ukraine would withdraw the forces from all of the sides to protect Sudzha itself, and later on withdraw the forces to Ukrainian territory in Sumy. The only question is whether Russia would proceed towards Sumy at the same point. Because if they attack Sumy region, they would show that they are not determined to follow peace agreement with Trump, for example, because they escalate with one more front line, this time in Sumy. In the coming days, guys, we're gonna see the full picture and where is the tendency. But what I want to tell you that the Ukrainian army has no threat of encirclement in Kursk, because Ukraine still controls this vast territory of the border, 12 or almost 13 kilometers. And the main road here is also under Ukrainian control. It's kind of the historical image you see here, filmed by Russians actually, so Ukraine uses those unmanned boats to attack some of the Russian port infrastructure or the Russian ships. And this over here is the other drone, which this boat launched. Not to the sky as you might think, but to the water. It's all water, it's filmed from above. Well, actually before Ukraine launched some of the FPV drones also from unmanned drone boats, and now you can see the other drones, sea drones, launched. Interesting. Yeah, as I say to you, maybe it's even a torpedo. Yeah, definitely it is a really unusual image, but it is what is happening. The Guardian reports that Kyiv would be able to destroy the Kerch Bridge. Some sort of the vice admiral is optimistic about it. Well, we'll see if Ukraine still has the capabilities, because ATACMS missiles which Ukraine has are mostly equipped with the cluster warhead, which does no harm to those kind of the robust constructions as the Kerch Bridge. So Ukraine needs different warheads, maybe also Storm Shadow could help, drone boats, and maybe unmanned Ukrainian flying vehicles like long-range drones as well. I wouldn't say that kaputting the bridge is impossible, it's a good idea, but maybe it is too late to do it now. It should have been done before the Ukrainian counteroffensive back in 2023. Well, maybe Ukraine was out of the tools, or maybe there was the ban from our allies to attack the Kerch Bridge, because we know that they restrict Ukraine sometimes a lot. As it was, for example, with the long-range missiles to be used on the Russian territory. You probably might recall that drama. Well, I will monitor the news, we'll see what might happen to the Kerch Bridge in the nearby future. Alright, to the other news, a representative of the German intelligence Bruno Kahl stated that the war in Ukraine may continue for many years, and that's what makes the European Union countries more safe. In a way, he is right. Russia is very busy in Ukraine and they cannot deploy their army elsewhere. They're full in Ukraine, so the threat for Europe now is minimum, but later we'll see. So you might say that the war is profitable for Europe after all because Russians' hands are just tightened. But actually, guys, it could be even worse for Europe after all. Because if Russia is successful in Ukraine, for example, as they were successful in Chechnya, they might establish their own puppet government, establish their own propaganda to change opinion of Ukrainian society, as they did again in Chechnya. And later on, they might use combined forces of Russian and Ukrainian armies to attack NATO. As I see it, Russian Ukraine has the most capable forces out there with a modern-day military experience, combat experience, drones and everything. So yeah, it could be very terrible for Europe after all. So the war in Ukraine is not profitable for Europe, but could be profitable for Russia in the coming future. Well, it all depends on how this war could be potentially ended. What Donald Trump proposes us today is just basically following the Russian demands. And it would lead us to the scenario I've told you before, to the worst case scenario. Then Ukraine will just become a pro-Russian state, like Belarus, for example, and that's how Russia might expand their interests in Europe, also trying to attack its neighbors, Baltic countries and maybe even Poland. Well, maybe you already know the news that Poland announces military training plan for all men. Yes, for all adult men. So European countries, especially those who are very close to Ukraine and Russia, they're very concerned about their future. They invest more into their military, and also they should understand that it's very important now to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia, because if Ukraine loses, it would lead to the combined attack of Ukraine and Russia on them in the future. Potentially, I say potentially. I still think that this scenario has just few of the chances to become reality, but we have the example from history between Chechnya and Russia. They were fighting against each other before, but now Chechens are fighting on the Russian side, which is completely crazy. And to implement this scenario in Ukraine, Russia should come out with the Ukrainian Kadyrov, some sort of the leader who might betray Ukrainian interests. But I don't think that they'll do it, and guys in Europe, be concerned about your future, because America will not protect us any longer, at least with Donald Trump. And that's why Poland officials say that Poland may need nuclear weapons. Absolutely correct, because again we have the historical example of Ukraine. Ukraine just abandoned its nukes. It just gave up those to Russia, and Russia attacks Ukraine. So the only possible security guarantee is nuclear weaponry. Unfortunately, my friends, it's like that, and that would bring us to the world where many of the countries would see the only solution for their security in obtaining nukes. In its turn, it will increase the risks of the Third World War, nuclear war, to happen dramatically. And it's only because the previous world order doesn't work any longer. The previous policeman, which was the United States of America, doesn't want to perform its duties any longer. It is just drunk and will be drunk for the next 4 years at least. Alright, we have the message from Elon Musk with his latest tweet relative to Ukrainian topic. It seems like Ukraine should be concerned after all about Starlink. Alright, what we have here, I literally challenge Putin, blah blah blah, and my Starlink system is a backbone for Ukrainian military. I would add also for the Russian military as well, because they also use Starlink. Their entire front line would collapse if I turned it off. Well, kind of the strong words here, but Starlink doesn't hold frontline. Frontline is being held by Ukrainian warriors who have the other ways of communication and access to internet as well. Not just Starlink is there, believe me, Elon Musk just says that he's saving Ukraine from Russia. It's not like that at all. If he cancels Starlink for Ukraine and at the same time for Russia, I mean in this entire region, well, it would be bad for Ukraine in a way, but it's not catastrophic. Moreover, there are alternate systems from Europe which are also in use by Ukrainian army and to which Russian army, for example, doesn't have the access, unlike they do with Starlinks. And as we say, the Starlink company is just unable to cut the signal or terminals for Russia. They say it's not possible for now, but they're working on this solution. They have been saying like that for a very long time. but without any sort of the result. So here Elon Musk again calls for peace, and he calls meat grinder to stop. I do support that idea. I even support a ceasefire. At the same time, I also support security guarantees for Ukraine. Without those, Russia would attack once again. I'm 100% sure about it. And first of all, Elon asked Russia and Putin if they want really to stop. Why everyone is pushing Ukraine so hard? Maybe because for your president, Donald Trump, it's much easier to push Ukraine because it's very dependent on the United States. Well, also Musk says that there should be sanctions applied on top 10 Ukrainian oligarchs, especially the ones within mentions in Monaco, and this will stop immediately. That is the key to puzzle. Well, I do not connect Ukrainian oligarchs with war in Ukraine. Really, they lost lots of their money since the start of the war, and that's why they invested their funds partially in Monaco as well. But in general, I support the idea to put sanctions on Ukrainian corrupt oligarchs, yes, but at the same time we also need to do the same for all of the Russian oligarchs. And from Elon Musk personally, we do not hear criticism towards Russia that much as he criticizes Ukraine. And yeah, we see kind of the bad signs again coming from the United States of America, telling us about the friendship between White House administration and Putin's regime. Well, maybe after all it's not a friendship but a very good partnership. So what is happening here that the United States of America vetoed Canada's plan for G7 task force on Russian shadow fleet. Trump's administration rejected this proposal from Canada as it reassesses its state of the multilateral organizations, whatever it means. Multilateral, sorry, my English is good and I still cannot understand that. But the fact is the fact, Donald Trump supports Russian shadow fleet. There were some of the sanctions introduced before, but those were made by the previous White House administration. Should Donald Trump leave those sanctions, he would be openly pro-Russian, which I think personally he really is. Or I guess just for you to understand the policy of the modern-day United States of America, here's the resolution of the United Nations, which was supported by overwhelming majority. It is dedicated to the International Day of Hope, whatever it means. It's all about saving generations from war, measures to strengthen the universal peace, tolerance, living together, human rights, freedom of speech. By the way, that's what Elon Musk tells us again and again. So yes, you may easily find this document. It's A79L54. So usual like supportive stuff to be humans in this world, to respect each other, not to make wars, peace, equality, rights of people, and so on. And here you can see how the countries voted for it. Yes, they supported it widely. You don't see the part of the countries behind my image, but believe me, they also voted for it. Everyone voted for it, except United States of America. Yeah, it is interesting. Russia voted for it. North Korea voted for it. Everyone, like all of the countries, like 3 of the countries abstained, Peru, Paraguay, and India, but United States voted against it. And here's the same number of resolutions, so you may find the original document, Day of Hope, blah blah blah, and this number, you may cross-check it yourself, definitely it's true. It means that the United States of America doesn't support the ideas and principles the country itself, like USA, was built on, and later on spread those ideas across the world. So people do support that, but United States, no. Is it cringe? Well, I would say so. And guys, I'm really concerned about this orange guy in power. Yeah, I make the jokes about him sometimes, but in general, I'm concerned more. And I have the fear that he could become even worse than Putin. First of all, he has more resources to mess up in this world. And what he declares actually towards Canada, Greenland, Panama, Gaza, Mexico echoes with what Russia tends to do and doing in Ukraine, for example. So I would call Donald Trump really a dictator, because you should be 100% a dictator talking like that to your neighbors. And it is not a joke at all, as some people might think. No, it's a real thing. So the world we live in is coming to instability. Could be the biggest instability in human history, which would lead to the Third World War. And yeah, according to experts, the World War III is coming in the next 10 years. Plus, those experts say that the war would not end well for Ukrainians. It would also lead to decline in America's economic and diplomatic dominance. Kind of the interesting article to read, and yes, I do agree with that statement that we're heading towards some big event. And yeah, should I call you my Ukrainian brothers and sisters? Because according to scientists, the new DNA research shows that half of the human beings alive today are descended from Yamna, who lived in Ukraine 5,000 years ago. Yamna is the tribe that was living on the territory of the Kherson Oblast 5,000 years ago. The article from the Wall Street Journal, the ancient horsemen who created the modern world. So yeah, we have this step hypothesis, but it's been proved right now with DNA tests that 5,000–6,000 years ago people were living here in this area in Kherson Oblast, Crimea, southern Ukraine of modern day, northern Caucasus and Russia. And later they moved further because it was warmer here after the ice age is over. So basically we are coming from some sort of the single or maximum 2–3 spots in the world. And that's why, my friends, we should share the same values. The values of freedom, democracy, peace, equality. That is what United States of America is voting against of. But anyways, guys, keep positive. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.